I have at this time asked Chief Justice Paul Dawley, who was the administrative judge and the Chief Justice of all the judges for the district courts, to conduct a administrative review of the case of David Becker. I do this for a number of reasons. One, this is the first time I have requested such a administrative review of the decision that came out of the Palmer District Court. But the second reason is that the judiciary does not have an opportunity to comment on cases. And given the public outcry on this, I think it's important for them to respond. They do have a code of judicial ethics which in essence prohibits comments on any individual cases. But as an elected official, as a member of the Governor's Council, I believe that Chief Paul Dawley will conduct an independent review, and I've asked him to forward a report to the Governor's Council no later than 30 days from now. Mr. Becker, who had been charged with 2 counts of indecent assault and battery in the Palmer District Court, the case was continued without a finding for a period of 2 years under conditions of probation. Should he complete those conditions, this case will be dismissed. He will have the right to have his record sealed, and he will, in essence, have no criminal record whatsoever. The judge at the time of sentencing was Thomas Estes. He is from Hampshire County. He appeared before the Governor's Council several years ago and was unanimously confirmed, and I'll talk about that process a little bit more. I'm also interested in why the original charge of rape was dismissed by the district attorney, whether the victims were consulted and offered an impact statement prior to the dismissal of the rape charges, if the victims were offered a chance to offer an impact statement at the time of sentencing. And again, given the notoriety of the case, the final disposition, and the demand from the public for an explanation, I do believe that an independent review is necessary at this time. So with that opening statement, I'd be pleased to answer any questions about this matter.
Have you called for a review like this before?
No, I have not, and this may well be the first time it's been done officially. At least in my 4 years, I can't think of another time. And being somewhat of a historian, I can't think of another time. There have been controversial appointments to the bench, no question about that. But I do not believe a case has been asked for an administrative review, at least in my 4 years.
How would you respond to those who may feel like this smacks of political opportunism, given that you're in the sheriff's race?
Well, I didn't choose the timing of this case. I really didn't, and I would rather focus my time and energy on the campaign. But this is part of my official responsibilities as a member of the Governor's Council. And when it came to my attention, I reacted. I didn't choose the timing of it. I understand people may think this is politically motivated, but this is an international case now. It's an international case. And it demands some type of response from someone. And since the judiciary cannot respond, Judge Estes cannot respond, the district attorney, for whatever reason, has gone through his public relations person. I believe it's my responsibility as a public official to do so. You know, from time to time the media picks up on these cases, and that's your responsibility, that's fine. But for example, when a judge releases somebody on low bail, and mayors and other elected officials cry out, perhaps not understanding the bail laws, and then they do press conferences and they say, we're going to change the legislation. Well, that's all good and well. It's been done for the last 30 years, but yet nobody follows up. Okay, Mr. Mayor, where have you been? What legislation have you filed? Did you go down and testify? What is the report of the committee? Is this going to go before the full legislature? I mean, there should be follow-up to all of this, and there rarely is. So in that regard, people lose respect for the judiciary, and it becomes a public spectacle. And I believe that we should have an answer to these questions that I have outlined. Why was the charge dismissed? Why was the case still in district court? A rape charge someone can receive a penalty up to life imprisonment. Why was it in the district court? Why was it in the superior court? Why was there no indictment? Why was the charge allowed to be reduced? Why didn't they have an agreed upon recommendation going in? I think these are all questions that beg answers, and that's why this administrative review is so important.
Go ahead.
What sort of outcome is there for one of these reviews? I mean, what is the finished product once it's done?
Well, I hope the finished product is at least there'll be a independent report done that is made available to the public,
Okay.
and then people can respond from there. But to have no ability to respond to this case, I think is unfair. So the public is left saying the judge should be recalled, he should be fired, maybe there's some political fallout for the district attorney, maybe there's some political fallout for the defense attorney, maybe there's fallout, obviously, for the victims. I think we have to have some resolution to this. People may not like the resolution, but at least there'll be a report, and then people can go from there. Should there be administrative procedures that are changed? Should the laws be changed? There's all sorts of results that can come out of this, but I think it begs the question of doing nothing is not an option. It's just not an option.
So you were among the 8 counselors who voted to confirm Judge Estes. Do you believe now that he should be recalled?
Well, there is no statutory provision for recall. There is no statutory provision for good judgment, bad judgment. There is no statutory provision for that. And let me just go through the process, because Estes went through the Judicial Nominating Commission. He was a nomination of Governor Patrick. The Judicial Nominating Commission is a 21-member body that recommends to the governor. He went through the Joint Bar Association at the end. He passed the test of local bar associations, both in Hampshire and Hampden County. His nomination made it to the governor, recommended by the chief legal counsel. Went to the governor's council, unanimously confirmed. I spent 2 days in Hampshire County talking to people because my concern was that his entire legal career was as a public defender. Generally, you like to see some balance. So that's far to the left, if you will, in the political spectrum. And then if you have a lifelong prosecutor to the right, you have concerns as well. How are they going to perform as a judge? So that was a concern. But he passed unanimously of the governor's council. At the hearing, he had District Attorney Dave Sullivan testified for him. Sheriff Robert Garvey testified for him. There was no opposition. Judge Bertha Josephson wrote a letter. We have all the records here. So there was no opposition. He came highly qualified from all aspects of the legal community and the law enforcement community, and there was no reason to vote against him. There was really no reason to vote against him. So, I've tried to open up these hearings and bring them out to Western Massachusetts. There's been sparse attendance by citizens, by the media. I mean, these are critical appointments. These judges pass judgment every day on people, and it impacts not only the defendants but the community at large. And there seems to be little interest as I leave the governor's council after 4 years in who's on the bench until something happens, and then there's all of a sudden this public attention. But there is a process. In this case of Judge Estes, there was absolutely no opposition, and to have folks from the left and from the right says an awful lot about his qualifications. So there is no provision in this case for any type of recall or resignation, or there just isn't under Massachusetts law. He's appointed to age 70. It used to be a lifetime appointment until there was a constitutional amendment that made it mandatory retirement at age 70. So these are pretty weighty positions in public life, and unfortunately, there is no public input, generally speaking, until something dramatic like this happens.
Do you think he made the wrong call in this case?
Again, I'm gonna reserve judgment because there's so many facts out here. There's so many moving parts. Why was that rape charge dismissed? Why was he even charged with rape? It was going to be dismissed. Was it just normal overcharging that some prosecutors do in an attempt to get a reduced charge. Did the victims have adequate notice to this hearing? Did they have input? There are a lot of moving parts. So for me to speculate without having all the information would not be fair. It would be easy to do as someone running for office to demand this or demand that, but that's not my nature, and I know how complicated these issues are. So a full independent hearing is important, and I'm confident that Judge Dolly will complete that work within 30 days.
So what's the next step? That's what I was gonna ask you in terms of.
Well, I'm waiting for a phone call now from the Chief Justice. He's received my communication, and he's a former prosecutor. He's a great judge. He's in charge of all the courts now, and he's been very responsive to the Governor's Council. So I'm confident after talking to him, we'll have a report done in due time.
Theoretically, if I'm a judge on the bench and I make a decision that's controversial, and someone like you immediately calls for this sort of process, doesn't that undercut me as a judge?
It does. It absolutely does. No question about it. But there's a lot of things that undercut judges.
Okay. I'm thinking in terms of like judicial independence and things.
No
like that.
question about it. No question about it. A few years ago, the Boston Globe did a spotlight piece on judges that were dismissing driving under cases because attorneys and defendants had opted for a bench trial. And there was a big headline of all these cases that were dismissed and they named the judges, and there were a few from Western Massachusetts. Now, I'm a regular guy. I got to think that would have an impact on me, even if I had a robe on. But then, if you got into the weeds of the story, generally those bench trials, they go to bench trials because the case is very weak. That, of course, was not reported by the Globe. The spotlight was on the judges and the dismissal. But if you get into it, you'll see that many of the cases, the breathalyzer was below the limit. There were other factors involved, and the cases were ultimately dismissed. So there's reasons why these things happen, and that's why judges have basically lifetime tenure, so they're not impacted. But I suspect just being a normal person, it would have an impact on you. I know as an elected official, when the media criticizes me, it makes you scratch your head and think a little bit. What could I have done better? Just a normal reaction by anybody. So of course it does. Absolutely. I don't like doing it, but it is necessary. It is necessary. Otherwise, what if I didn't do this, what would be the result? People would say there'd be total distrust of the judiciary. There'd be no confidence, and who knows? I just don't think that's the right way to proceed.